recording? Yes, we're recording. Get up. Great. So with a quorum present, I would like to call this regular meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee to order at 6:34 p.m. This is a regular meeting for the month of March, who's with an agenda that was posted more than 24 hours in advance as required. We are permitted to meet in this electronic format. I could pull up I want to read exactly or what I'm supposed to read. I lost my, give me 1 minute. Where did I put it? So many things are open on my screen. I'm sorry. Where's here it is. Great. Due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis, in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, extended by Executive Order 2021-02, the board is authorized to meet in this electronic format. We've published the Zoom meeting ID and passcode on the agenda, as you know, within the timeframes that are necessary. And at this point, I'll ask each member who's participating electronically to ask the reason for our records, to ask the reason that they're doing so, stating that it's not reasonably practical to attend in person. I'll ask you to also identify where you are, if anyone is present with you, and if you're able to hear the recording. So, go back to my screen. Great. Dave?
I am at home because of COVID and nobody's around me.
Okay, so that's Dave Blinn. He's at his home and you can hear us, our proceedings.
Yes, sure can.
Great. Lauren? You're muted. If you could unmute.
Are you talking to me?
There you go.
Very good idea, Lauren Ridstrom. I'm at home alone and because of COVID.
Great. Raul?
I'm at home alone right now due to COVID. I'm in the dining room all by myself, and I can hear you loud and clear.
Great. Brian?
This is Brian. I'm at home on Mason Road in Brookline. I'm the only person in the room. Brendan is elsewhere in the house. I can hear fine and I'm muting due to COVID.
Great. I'm Darlene Mann. I am at my home. I'm participating electronically due to COVID. I am alone in my home office, but not alone in my home. And I can, as the host of the meeting, I'm hosting the meeting and can hear and see the proceedings. Kelly, would you mind introducing yourself as well since you're participating?
Yes, I am Kelly Seeley, Business Administrator for SAU 41. I'm meeting remotely because of COVID. I'm in my house in Merrimack and I can hear everything.
Great. Okay, so I hadn't heard from Matt or Tom, so we'll see if they participate. They might just be running a few minutes late. Cindy is unable to participate and has an excused absence. So at this point, I think, I did want to address a couple of things. My agenda. I swear I have everything opened and ready to go. And I can't find what I need. Hold on, everybody. Sorry. Too many open things. Where is my agenda? Okay, give me 1 more minute. I'm sorry. Open. There we go. Great. So I'll ask first for agenda adjustments. I am going to make an adjustment to add approval of minutes. Earlier today, someone brought to my attention that I had left that off of the agenda inadvertently because at our last meeting, we weren't going to address minutes because we were just doing a quick meeting to address our positions on warrant articles. So we do have 4 sets of minutes to address this evening. Everyone has had the links and seen them previously, but I did send out another document that contained links. And if you've hopefully had a chance to review those, I'll add that as after the next item, which is appointing a meeting observer. For April will be Raul. There are no members of the public participating this evening. And at this point, I will accept a motion to approve the meeting minutes of our January 28th regular meeting.
So moved.
From Lauren, seconded by
I'll second.
Brian. Any questions, addenda, changes? Okay, seeing none. Seeing none, we need to do a roll call vote because we're in this format. So I'll ask for your vote on approving the minutes of the January 28th meeting. Dave?
I'm not sure if I was there.
I
I don't think I was.
don't think you were for that one. No, actually, I think you were there for that one. Wait, I have that.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm so confused.
Good golly, where am I putting everything? Oh my gosh. All right. He was there. I'm getting a note that you were there. So yes, you were attending. Thank you, Don. You were there. So I'll take your vote.
Approved.
Okay. Dave is a yes. Brian,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Raul,
Yes.
and Darlene votes yes. So that motion passes 5-0-0. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of the February 2nd meeting. So these are the minutes because we're brought to order. I gave a little 10-minute overview of the public hearing, the information for the public hearing. Then we went into public hearing, we came out, we took motions. So that's what these meeting minutes are about. So thank you, Lauren.
I second.
Seconded by Raul. Any adjustments or amendments? Seeing none. Dave, you were absent for these. So Dave,
Abstain.
you're abstaining? Okay. Brian,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Raul,
Yes.
and Darlene votes yes. So that's a 4-0-1. Now the minutes for the February 2nd public hearing. Motion to bring those to the floor for approval
So moved.
from Lauren,
Second.
by Raul. Okay, roll call vote. Dave,
Abstain.
Brian,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Raul,
Yes.
and Darlene votes yes. And I'll take a motion to approve the meeting minutes of our February 11th meeting
So moved.
from Lauren, seconded by
Raul.
Raul. Great. This was the meeting where we took positions on the petition articles, or at least I think it was 4 out of the 5 petition articles, because the other one we did do at the public hearing. Dave, you were absent for this as well.
Abstain.
Okay. Brian,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Raul,
Yes.
and Darlene votes yes. Great. Dispense with the minutes. Dispense with public input, so we can move on to the agenda. I do think it'll be pretty kind of quick with tonight's meeting. As you all know, we don't normally meet in March because we have our March meeting. We skip a meeting later in the month and move on to April. Brian did raise a question to me by email about organization of the meeting. We've always practiced that after the town meeting, any new members are sworn in by Drew, and at the next meeting we have an organizational meeting. Brian and his community in Brookline did get some guidance that you're able to reorganize before. I would still like to suspend until we're done with the April meeting, even though we all have the same players in place, because Lauren and Brian won their elections. So congratulations, yay. You get to stay with us for another 3 years. And so I would still like to, hold off until whether we meet at the end of April or May. I would just like to hold off until we have our town meeting.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. But I appreciate the guidance though, Brian, because I hadn't heard that. And I haven't had a chance to just check in with Drew. I think he's just so drilled into my head that members have to be sworn in and everything else. But I guess in COVID, they're just kind of waving and moving, things around and allowing some things that they maybe hadn't previously done. But
Yeah, and I was sworn in at town hall.
oh, you were. Oh, so you're already.
Yes.
Lauren, I don't know if you were or not.
No.
Okay. And Lauren has the dubious distinction of being on the Hollis Budget Committee as well. So he actually won 2 elections.
Yeah.
So I'll look forward to
Well,
working with
lucky
Lauren on that committee as well.
Hey, Darlene,
Mhm.
I just want to point out too that Lauren was the most popular vote getter in town.
He was the most popular vote getter, as was Brian in his community.
Excellent. Congratulations, Brian
Yes,
and
they
Lauren.
were the highest vote getters among the ballots. It was fantastic. I did notice that. Did you guys notice? Well, Brian, I think you noticed. Did you notice that,
Winning.
Lauren?
Running for the budget committee, it's the only election you can win and lose at the same time.
It's great. Really happy to be working with you both again, or continue to work with you both. So at about 5 o'clock this afternoon, I forwarded everybody a summary of grant funding that the district has received. I'm not sure if you've all had a chance to look at it yet. I'll share my screen. If I can find the file. I did have it up. There it is. So wait a minute, how do I do this now? I have to, hold on. Oh, here we go. There it is. And then I'll share my screen. Oh boy. I can't, why does this never work? I want to share. There it is. I'll show this. There we go. Can everybody see this? Co-op COVID-19 state and federal funding summary.
Yes.
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 Great. I asked Kelly to put this together. There's a lot going on with federal grant funding. As a district, and even as an SAU, you don't get a lot of grant funding. We get, catastrophic aid or special education aid and things like that. But generally speaking, our district doesn't get a ton of aid money. And for that reason, part of the aid and grant funding we're getting now isn't as significant as other communities because they use the Title I distributions to allocate a lot of this federal funding that's coming up because of the CARES Act. But there are several different opportunities, several different rounds of CARES funding that have taken place and will continue to take place. And so I asked Kelly to just put this together to give us a sense of where we are, what we've spent, and where we're going. It's going to change. As I said, there are just, at least one more round that hasn't been quantified yet, and it's going to continue. The end dates to use these funds are continuing out until 2024 at this point. So there will be more money, more funding, and but I'll let Kelly kind of give us an overview of where for the co-op district we are. There would be similar summaries for Brookline, for Hollis as well, because we received aid by district, not by SAU. Kelly, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, so to date, we have actually received in our hands $339,000, as you can see on the chart. And that is a result of four sources, if you will. And the first one is the CARES Act, which came to life in about a year ago now. And so that's the first line. The second line is from actually an application we made through the town of Hollis they had what is called the Gopher fund that they could draw from, and they weren't using it all. So we took advantage of that for both Hollis and for co-op. So that's that amount. Then the SPSRF number 1 and 2, the number 1 was based on $200 per student, and that's what we received. That was actually more fair to us than the ESSER 1, because ESSER 1, as Darlene mentioned, is ESSER 1 funds, and we just don't get much money when we are in that formula world. But when it was based on number of students, you can see the difference in the amount that we got. And then the second round, the SPSRF, was the state had $10 million in reserve, and that was opened up to schools to apply for. So all of us did a mad dash to grab all that we could. And then we had to subtract the Gopher funds from what we were eligible for in order to get anything. And that's why our number on that one is so much lower than what you'll see. Like Brookline got a lot more money in that round because they didn't have the Gopher funds. And
I could just, if you don't mind, Kelly, just to distinguish SPSRF from Gopher and ESSER, well, from ESSER 1, the CARES Act. The SPSRF, so the way the grants work is the money gets assigned to, allocated to the district, and the districts have to identify activities and uses of the funds, and then you basically spend the money as a district, and then you apply to be kind of like reimbursed. But with SPSRF 1 and 2, that money was given to us directly. The $200 per student was just a flat amount of money. You didn't have to identify how you were specifically going to use it, but when you applied for SPSRF 2, they did ask you for a breakdown of what are you spending on, what do you need. They subtracted out the $200 per student, allocated and took a percentage of to enable to distribute the funds among all the projects that were listed. And those were just direct payments to the district. So we didn't, because we kind of pre-identified what we would be spending the money on, we didn't have to identify activities and go back and, you know, it wasn't kind of held for us. It was distributed directly to the districts.
right.
So.
In the end, because there were so many applications for that money, only 68% of what was, if you will, applied for, that's not really the right word, but was distributed. So we were really smart in using that Gopher money because that part was not subjected to the 68%. So,
Right.
So the next box or section there is sort of the breakdown of the expenses that we've incurred from March through December. And I'm using the same categories as we used when we, quote, applied to the state for our reimbursement, if you will. And you can see we have facilities and rentals where we had contracted services and materials and supplies and things to meet the CDC guidelines. So you're looking at things like no-touch faucets there. You're looking at pods for storage. You're looking at tents. Supplies like that are, you know, I can't remember everything, but anyway. And then the next category is mainly PPE. So you're looking at all various kinds of PPE that we have: the face masks, the gloves, the plexiglass, the cleaning supplies that we had to purchase, extra cleaning supplies, the sprayers that we had. So there's a lot going on in that category. And then staffing is going to relate to whatever we had to hire that we wouldn't normally hire for staffing to meet the needs of our students. And you know, that's the salary and benefits there, plus some contracted services, which would generally relate to student services kids. And then technology related costs, you're looking at Chromebooks mostly there, and some other materials and supplies for teachers. And curriculum is purely for some of the things that teachers had to buy. They had to buy extra books because we have remote students. They weren't really planning on doing it that way. They're doing something different because they're in remote. So that pretty much sums up your expenses that we had in that time period. And we were able to fund all but about $3,000. So that was, that worked out very well. What we anticipate in continued expenses are in those same categories: the facilities, rentals, and the PPE line and the staffing line. You can see there how I've broken those down. And those are fairly solid numbers, but they could change. They could be less depending on changes, you know, with, like, if we were to recall staff, that might, the staffing number might go down a little bit. Maybe we don't need as much PPE as I've assigned there, or cleaning, outside cleaning that we are taking advantage of. But those are, I would say, fairly solid numbers. And we're hoping to cover that number with the FY21 budget, so we can utilize any additional funds that we may get for loss of learning, which is going to end up being our priority going forward. So that last box is addressing just that. We expect to get, well, we know we're going to get ESSER 2, and that is a solid number that we've been told that's what we're getting. And again, that's sort of based on that Title I formula that you saw at the very beginning. And that is available for us to obligate, is what they say. In other words, we have to tell that we have up until September 30th of 2023 to tell them how we're going to use that money. And so that gives us, the administration, a lot of time to think about how best to use that to for our students. And then the ARPA money is that $1.9 trillion that was just passed. Darlene just told me of a brand new quote way they're going to fund that today. So what I've got here could be completely wrong, but that's.
And who knows? Kelly and I were on a call yesterday where I would say, yes, slightly more than double. That looks about right. And then I was on a call today and they said it would be more. So we'll have to kind of wait and see how those allocations
exactly work. So the good news, though, is whatever that number is going to be, thank God we have until 2023 to figure out how to use it, because if they would turn around and say, okay, you have until June, we would be in some deep doo-doo right now. So that's pretty much what I know where we are right today. So
does anyone before I ask for questions, I just want to mention that at 6:53, Matt joined our call. So Matt, do you mind just introducing yourself and kind of going through the protocol of just saying why you're participating electronically, that due to COVID, where you are, who's with you, if you can hear us?
Yep, this is Matt McGuire. I can hear you. I am participating from home from COVID. I am by myself in my home office, but not by myself in the house.
Okay, great.
And
Thanks.
I can hear and see video okay.
Great, thank you. So we can go back now. Does anyone have any questions on the summary that?
Yes,
Kelly
I have a
just went
question.
over? Sure. Go ahead,
Darlene,
Roland.
it would be good for when writing the meeting minutes about this meeting to provide a little bit of explanation behind each term, how it works, like you did at the beginning on the 4 sources of funding.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make a point for when the meeting minutes are drafted, to make sure that some rationale or some definition of terms is used to explain how Gopher works, or SRF number 1 and number 2 work, and so on.
Okay, and I'll also provide some information on what what ESSER stands for, and SPSRF and things like that, just to kind of explain some of the acronyms, because I have to keep going back to look as well. So I'll just, it's like the coronavirus aid and relief and something or other. So I'll make sure that Dawn has those acronyms
Okay.
broken out as well. And Dawn is participating in recording this as well. So I think she has this information, and I'll be in touch with her to make sure that we have some clarification on terms.
She does a wonderful job on the meeting.
She does do a great job.
Matt McGuire used to do a great job, but she also does a great job.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Well, I do. So the request is to use the budget year, the 21 budget year, to cover the 100,000 shortfall. Is that right?
That is the plan at this point in time, yes.
Okay, so this isn't a question for the budget committee then?
I guess it can be.
I didn't intend it as that yet, Lauren, because we haven't seen, we'll see results in the kind of that April, May timeframe. I asked Kelly to put this together just to get an understanding of kind of where we were. By the time we get to April or even the end of May, there might be other things that need to be encumbered instead of or in addition to this type of expense. But at this point, just gives us a heads up of where we are, and for us to consider, like as you said, I mean, I don't know if in the past I think we actually do give guidance on the encumbrances. We haven't had any encumbrances in a couple of years, so we haven't really had anything to give feedback on. So I think at this point, I would recommend reviewing this, asking questions, having the discussion as a budget committee, and holding off on a position on it until we have a better understanding of where results are for the district.
Okay, so the question would be, what are the options? What if we don't use the budget to cover that? What if
Then we would have to use the ESSER 2 and the ARPA funding.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Well, then I guess the options are you could use the ESSER 2 and the ARPA funding, but as Kelly mentioned, one of the most significant reasons for all of this funding is to address gaps that might have occurred in learning because of using a remote environment. So they're really, while there are myriad things the funds can be used for, one of the predominant things they would like school districts to be using it for is to address those learning gaps. So aside from this additional funding, I would say we would be looking at the unreserved fund balance, because if there's money left in the budget, we wouldn't go to recommend using a contingency or any of the trust funds because there's money in the budget. So
Okay.
we would be reducing if we had, $300,000 that would have gone back to the taxpayer, but we have 100,000 here in additional expenses, then it would be $200,000 that goes back to the taxpayer.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this discussion is going to be for some future date.
Yeah, I would say probably the May timeframe.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Darlene, are we going to get an update, and Kelly, on where we are regarding actual expenses versus budgeted?
Yes, I did speak with Kelly about that, and I said that April was an appropriate timeframe. That was the next time that she was going to be putting results together for the board, and that coincides with having results information if asked at the annual meeting, and it'll fall in line with our April meeting. And typically we don't have them in March anyway, because we usually have our meeting, and we don't usually discuss results in March. So we'll see them in April.
All right,
short
thank
answer.
you very much.
Any other questions? Well, thanks, Kelly. I know it's a lot to manage, across the 3 districts, because it just feels like they're constantly authorizing money, saying you can spend it on one thing, then you can move it to something. There's just a lot the wheels just keep turning on this. And like I said, the difference between a phone call yesterday and a phone call today, we're just going to have to wait with some of the funding to just see how it really does work out. And actually where the ARPA funding is concerned, even after the amount is approved, I think the first payout of it is at 2/3 of that, because not all the money is going to be released at once. So there are just going to be, phases, and it's just going to kind of continue for the next little while. Great. I will stop sharing at this point, and I will the next thing on our agenda is to talk about the March meeting, the April meeting.
Yeah, Darlene, I got to make an editorial comment.
Yes.
And this is some based on what I know is going on at another school district out of New Hampshire. So it doesn't directly relate to this, but there is so much cash and there's so much liquidity flowing into to all our systems, whether it's the town or whether it's a school, that we're making up stuff to spend it on. And that might not be true in Hollis, but it is certainly true in another district that I know of. I mean, they just have to make stuff up. There's so much cash flowing in. So I guess that's the intent of the administration, but it does not seem like a prudent, it just doesn't seem prudent to me as a town or as a district to make things up to spend the money.
I appreciate that. And I so agree with you. And that's why I would say, well, particularly in the case of our district, because there's a lot of money, but in our district's case right now, it's flowed at a reasonable level to meet the costs that we have so far. And I appreciate that the district's going to be focusing on closing those gaps with learning and things like that. But I agree with you. It really is when you see some of the amounts that are in other districts. One of the things that with the round 2 and round 3, ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 that they're talking about is to allow like construction to improve HVAC systems for ventilation and things like that. And we start to get into, consideration for using outdoor spaces and things like that. But I agree, it still needs to be, I don't think I don't look at it as an opportunity to like run through a CIP plan just to be able to justify and say, well, we're going to use this money, and have it not be directly related to delivery of instruction, improving facilities that legitimately improve ventilation and things like that. But yeah, it is a little disconcerting to see the amounts that are in some communities, and to imagine that, as you said, they're just going to kind of make things up and just use it, just to use it. So.
And I just want to assure you that the conversations I've been a part of so far are certainly not about making things up. I think there's a real legitimate need to lessen that learning gap that is a real thing for many students. And the discussion we had this morning was all about making sure we are very thoughtful in how we do that. And fortunately, we have the time to do that, so we can make really good, sound decisions based on data. And that goes for any facility discussion we might have as well. So although I can't tell you at this time how we plan to spend it, but Lauren, I assure you we will spend it wisely, and we're not afraid to give money back to the taxpayers. We can, of course, give grant money back to the taxpayers, but we can certainly give budgeted money if that ends up being the way it ends up being. We're not going to hoard money and try to make things up to spend it. I assure you that's not going to happen. Not under.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm gonna now, I'm not good at the sharing screen thing. Okay, here. Okay, so I shared with everybody a draft. I'm gonna say it in big, bold capital letters, draft of the presentation for the district meeting. It follows a very similar format to what we're all used to. We are still scheduled for the annual meeting on April 10th. Nothing has changed with that. I do not know the start time. I'm going to assume it's going to be sometime mid to late morning, but I don't know for sure. It'll also be weather dependent. So if there's rain anticipated, I think the rain date is the following Saturday on the 17th. I don't know if I'll even be doing a presentation, if I'll be talking, if there's a screen. I don't know the setup. But for now, I'm just assuming that we're kind of going to run an outdoor meeting the same way we would run an indoor meeting. So I've kept the format very much the same format I've been using for several rounds now. And wanted to just run through it, show you where I am. There are still some things that obviously need to be updated. And I'm just looking for some feedback because of the state of where some of the percentages and changes occur, kind of how best to address certain things. So we run through the individual amounts for the appropriating articles.
Darlene,
Yes.
this chart, it would be useful. Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's fine. I appreciate it.
But it would be useful to maybe put a little arrow that says up. I mean, in terms of if the line item has gone up by 1% or 2% or whatever the number is, it might be useful to have it next to it, so at least people can compare from previous years how that that happened.
Okay.
Especially if we don't have that much time to give the briefing and we have to cut back on charts.
Right.
It
Right.
might be, and this chart is not complicated and it's simple enough where just having a little arrow or maybe a percentage number next to it
Okay.
is good. It helps
Okay.
you see where the 3.6% came from.
Right. Okay. Anyone else?
Good idea.
I like it. The 10% limitation, this was calculated and included in our MS 27 that we signed. So we bring it up and talk about it. We actually have a legal requirement to stipulate what the limit, the maximum is that can be approved at by the legislative body. This is now later over in the backup, I have a budget to actual comparison of where we budgeted and where our actuals actually turned out. We've used that in the past. I started using this one a couple of years ago. It has not yet been adjusted and I didn't add FY22 to it yet. So the red header, it means that it has to be revised and still edited. But this is just a chart I just, because a lot of the time when I'm comparing things, I just make the distinction of whether it's been inflation adjusted or not. So this is just an inflation adjusted view of our budgets. The pie chart, which I used during the public hearing, talk a little bit about student enrollment. And everything up to blue is an actual, and then we have 5 years of estimates, and then continue into how that enrollment is split between the two districts. I mean, the two towns. Oh, this one needs to be updated. Oh no, this one's fine. So this is where I talk about what we raise through tax effort is lower than what the budget is. So while we're gaining approval for the blue line, what we actually raise in taxation is what's in the red line. And here I do talk about the fact that here in 2021, we're at a lower than estimated, and we're at a kind of lower than we've seen recently level for tax effort due to two main factors that drove that for last year. And that is due to the fund balance, the fund balance return to the taxpayers of $1.2 million, which is due to budget underruns in general, and then more specifically, budget underruns related to doing remote learning last spring. Because if you remember, basically from this point forward, mid-March forward, the district was in a remote learning environment. So we had savings in some staffing, professional development. We weren't running buses, so we renegotiated things with our transportation, with the bus company, utility savings and things like that. And here's where we also see the impact in lower tax effort of the Brookline receiving the disparity aid, which was a one-time addition to adequacy. So while the total was $1.2 million for Brookline, 750,000 of it was on the co-op side, and the balance was on the Brookline K-6 elementary side. So those are two main drivers of the tax effort that drove tax rates to be lower than we estimated from a co-op tax rate perspective. And at least in Brookline's case, lower in total from a total tax rate perspective, and just slightly higher in Hollis. So I know it's a lot of information and it's a lot to convey, but I think it's important because at least at this point, when we talk about revenue and aid for the upcoming year, we aren't estimating our unreserved fund balance to be as high, and we aren't receiving the disparity aid. And those revenue and aid adjustments are separate from the budget, but directly affect the tax effort and the tax rates. I know this is a busy chart. And maybe it's something that I feel like it's important, especially given this environment, for people to actually see, like, here's where we're not getting this revenue. Here's where we're not seeing this aid. But again, giving time frames and what I'm able to say, I might just speak to that as I do like a chart like this that just talks about it in higher level terms. Again, you still see the differences of here, the revenue and the aid. You just don't see it by town like you see it here. And as we move forward to FY22, this is kind of that like similar to that arrow chart you were talking about, Raul, and what effect, we have, main drivers to tax effort in FY22, and one of them's on the budget side, and then how that directionally affects tax effort. So if you have a higher budget, you would have a higher tax effort. If you have lower revenue, that means higher tax effort. If you have lower state aid, that means higher tax effort. So those directional changes mean we have higher tax effort for the upcoming year. This is another pie chart of how things get distributed between the two communities based on apportionment. And then these are the tax rate impacts. So one of the things I mentioned at the public hearing was that there are potential legislative funding solutions that would potentially reinstate the disparity aid. I think there were a couple different bills that were addressing adequacy. So like these numbers here, I'm going to put in red because they need to be changed, because they some were retained in committee, some were inexpedient to legislate. So right now, I think in HB 623 was the most direct. It basically said reinstitute disparity aid. That one I believe was retained in committee, but there is SB 145, which addresses disparity going forward, at least through FY22 or FY23. So we just have to kind of just wait and see. And I think the votes on a lot of these bills are taking place. Brian, I think you gave me the dates of April 7th to 9th. So they're taking place literally right before the town meeting. So
In the House, yes.
oh, in the House. Okay, so that won't even, okay, so we wouldn't even know. So because then they would need Senate approval. So okay, this we'll have maybe a sense of whether I can include a chart like this or not. So this is just going to be a work in progress. One of the things I hadn't mentioned, and this would affect our on the revenue side, some of our aid, is that there's actually a House bill that reduces the threshold to qualify for special education aid. So right now it's at, the district needs to do like 3.5 times a certain amount. It was going to reduce it to 2.5 times. So if that happens and there's a lower threshold, that means more of our special education and student services costs actually may qualify. But I don't know cases and, anything like that, but there's the potential that that could have an impact as well. So this one is really a moving target, but the intention of it was to say there are potential legislative funding solutions. Here's some of the amounts that are potentially reinstated, and here's what the tax impact would be to the community. If I know for sure that things like the NHRS rate is not going anywhere, whatever, I'll obviously take that out. I'm really hoping that they can address something with adequacy and disparity aid, because that really has a significant impact, especially for Brookline.
Hey, Darlene,
Yes.
assuming this chart stays in the briefing, is there any reason why the Hollis box for HB 623 is empty?
Yes, that's because if that bill or something like it reinstates disparity aid, that was only something Brookline was the only community in the co-op that received it. Hollis didn't receive any of it because disparity aid is specifically calculated based on equalized value per student. And if you met a certain threshold, you didn't qualify. So in Hollis, we meet that Hollis meets the threshold, Brookline doesn't. And then if you fall short and don't meet the threshold, there's like a sliding scale of how much gets allocated per student. So Brookline is the town that qualifies for that, not Hollis. So that's why there's no impact to Hollis.
So should we reflect something that basically highlights or at least provides either not applicable or maybe doesn't qualify or whatever the terminology is, but at least
sure, that's fine. Something like that. Okay. Okay. This is a new chart. Actually, I did use talk a little bit about this chart is talking about kind of back to that the previous chart that showed, because we're not getting revenue, tax effort goes up, tax effort increases, and that has a tax effect. This is basically saying what those tax impacts are. The one additional piece that's added to this is the shift in average daily membership. What's anticipated with the view we have right now is based on enrollment from the fall. And so that enrollment number is not the same as ADM and is a significant shift back to Hollis. It's actually the most significant shift in enrollment or ADM that I've seen since we've been doing this, usually we see, you know, a little bit of movement, a quarter percentage point, half a percentage point. This was a 2 percentage point swing. And so we really just need to consider the best number, the right number to use to do an estimate is. So it does have a significant impact. And what I'm trying to get to is, you know, something like for every half percentage point change, this is how much money moves between the districts. So right now, based on the ADM shift that we have, just because of ADM, almost $500,000 shifts to Hollis. And that's not an apportioned shift, that's just a direct shift. So if we do nothing else to the budget, if we had the exact same budget, the exact same revenue, and the exact same aid as we did for FY21, and all we did was shift ADM, $479,000 would go back to Hollis. And then from there, we make those other adjustments like movements in adequacy, revenue, and the budget. That's really, it's a lot to explain. And
Darlene?
it's, yes.
Again, sorry to interrupt. Since you have space at the bottom of the chart,
Yeah.
I would put like maybe a little bumper sticker to help summarize or
Yes.
highlight what the impact is.
Yes, you're exactly right. And that's why we're incomplete. And so that's why I wanted just some feedback. If you think this is a helpful way of showing it, I don't know the best way to explain all of that.
Well, for example, if because of population shift, say growing in Brookline higher than in Hollis, that results in funding coming back to Hollis. At least at a glance, if people don't know the explanation behind it, they are likely to go off at the deep end. But if they know the explanation, they're likely to understand that, and that needs to be explained, you know?
Right.
I mean, I think we need to educate the public as we go through this, because this is important.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have any thoughts? Okay, well, everyone can think about it. And if you have any thoughts, feel free to shoot me an email and let me know what you think. But like, and as I said, you know, in the past, the changes have been, you know, in that for ADM specifically, in that 0.5% to 1/4% movement, it's, you know, been relatively stable. And again, there actually is legislation that's out there saying, you know, for adequacy purposes, well, it wouldn't even affect, I was going to say, would it affect our apportionment formula, but it wouldn't. For adequacy purposes, we're going to use, you know, a different ADM count, but actually our apportionment formula is tied to the end of year ADM, and we don't make any distinction between, oh, it was a COVID year, so we're going to use a different level of ADM. It just always uses the year-end ADM, so that doesn't even matter. So it really is just going to come down to, you know, I am actually, one of the things I was going to do was go back through some of my notes and old files and see if I could see a trend between our October enrollment and our end of year ADM to see if there's any relationship between the two. Do they come within 10% of each other? Has ADM at the end of the year, has the distribution been higher than enrollment, lower than enrollment? And just to see if there's any trend there, to see if there's any adjustment we may want to consider. Actually, that's another conversation I'd like to have as we continue. But let me just make a note about adjusting. Okay, so this one is really kind of the one that's kind of most in development right now. It's I just want to kind of figure out the best way to show it, calculate it, and be able to explain it. This is the place where we talk about the total impact. So, you know, the co-op local is what we are talking about it at our meeting, and all of these other pieces are determined by already determined by votes, by district meetings, by, SB2 ballots and things like that. I think, I don't know, by the time we go on April 10th, is the co-op the last? Is everything going to be finished in Brookline?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so I'll follow up with Tad Putney. I usually get updates from him just to double check where things finished up.
Yeah, so the for the schools, we're SB2, so we did that on election day. The town meeting is this weekend,
Oh,
so on Saturday.
oh, okay.
So we'll have the results, by Monday.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's great. Perfect. Okay. I'll follow up with him. Okay. And I'm not, this is just a trend chart of, I don't
Darlene?
know. Yes,
Can you go back to the previous chart for a second, please?
sure.
Are those numbers supposed to add up to 2844?
Oh. Yep, I'm missing a digit there. Hold on a minute. Hold on. Wait, it's in, oh, I had it right here.
Sorry about that, but I felt I needed.
I think it's 1195 here. Oops, thank you. And then that 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. So that's 12, 22. That should be about right, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. This is the trend chart of the total tax rate. So where the previous one, where the previous one talked just specifically about the co-op tax rate, kind of to show like, here's where we are and here's where we were anticipated being last year. Here's where we are with this year's rate. This one is to just give everybody the view of where their tax rates have been, over a period of time. I could add, they're not adjusted for inflation. I could add another column that's inflation adjusted tax rate. I could add a line that's inflation adjusted tax rate. I could not show this chart at all, but I think what is interesting about it is that you can really see where the revaluations are. So right here from FY14 to FY18 was one revaluation period. Here's where we were in another reval period. And here in Brookline, same thing. You could see right there was when the community was revalued. And right here was the next revaluation.
So a question, looking at Brookline here.
Yeah.
You've got for fiscal year 22 estimated going up.
Yeah.
Something on the previous chart total, you've got the 2844. But the percentage,
don't I?
But the percentage change is down 5. So those two are in disagreement.
Yes, thank you. I'll check that. Okay. Hold on.
I think the negative 5% was based on maybe the old number. I don't know.
Well, they seem to be off by exactly $1. 29.44 versus 28.44.
Yeah, it is supposed
Yeah.
to be 20. It's 29.44. So
Yeah,
this
okay.
one is 29.44. Okay. Great. So that's 21, 22, 23, 26, 29. Yeah. Okay. But I'll double check all the numbers and make sure, but I thank you for pointing those out. So again, here's another, I'm
yeah.
not sure.
For that last one, you want to highlight in red like the 5% decrease, because that's
Yep.
obviously be recalculated just so you don't lose it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's weird. Why is that happening? All right, I'm gonna have to just double check these two charts. So let me just make a note. Okay.
Darlene,
Yeah.
if you, before the meeting in April, if you find out how much time you're gonna have, and you have to make an adjustment on the number of graphs, are you going to maybe tell us which ones you plan to delete for backup and which
Yep.
ones you want to keep in the main story?
Absolutely. Okay. I just need to just check one thing. Sorry, this is bugging me. Oh, it's up 5.9. It's actually up 5.9%, Brian. It's up 5.9. But it might not be.
Take the old numbers instead.
I know, like the old numbers were better. That was just bugging me. I'm like, why am I saying it's going down? It must have been, anyway. Okay, so we'll make sure those are right. What do we think about the adjusting for inflation and showing that as well? Would that just be confusing? Would it?
If you don't show it, go ahead, Brian.
It kind of depends on how much it shows. Yeah, I don't know. It might be one of those you'd have to look at it both ways and then decide which makes more sense.
Right. Okay.
I was going to say that if you don't calculate it, somebody's going to ask.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, you probably ought to relate it to inflation, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so that is kind of the preamble, and then we go through the support staff. These are the exact same charts that were used in the public hearing. I don't know if the school board is going to change them, use them. I'm not sure what they're going to do. Same for the professional staff. Here we have the operating budget. Overall changes, and then the top, some 5 increase. I have 5 and 5 increases and 5 decreases. So these were lifted directly from the public hearing chart. Same with SAU budget. The athletics trust fund, the revolving fund, how we're utilizing it, the contingency. This is a chart I shared with everybody. I think I shared with everyone. Yeah, I sent this out to everyone, and I have not updated it for the Brookline School District, so I don't know what passed and didn't. I think everything passed. I think you told me everything passed, Brian.
Yes, everything money-wise passed.
Okay, and the Hollis School District has their meeting next week, so I'll know where theirs stands. So this was just a comparison of, in the SAU, where all the contingency and retained fund balances and maintenance funds balances lie, just to give an overall summary of that. And then there's the unanticipated funds, and then the petition articles. So for the petition articles, we did take positions as a budget committee. I do plan to speak to the tax impact on the warrant and the tax cap. I can share it, the tax cap presentation. I haven't, I've had it for a few years, and so I'll make some updates to it, but I haven't looked at that yet. It isn't long. I do, for the tax cap, I do, and for the tax impact on the warrant, but for the tax cap more particularly, I do notify Drew that we have a rebuttal to it. So that allows me, if he allows the petitioner 10 minutes, in the past he's allowed me 5 to speak to it. So I do have some information on that, and I'll share that with everybody before, probably over the weekend, when I make the updates to that presentation. SB2, amending the Articles of Agreement, the anti-discrimination recommendation, and other business. Just another warrant summary, and I have as backup, because just to address some question. Oh, I know. I have an unreserved fund balance summary, so I haven't updated this one yet. This is the budget to actual comparison. I just kind of always have this available, and I'd actually like to know anyone's, the front end of the presentation is starting to feel long, but cost per student, cost per pupil, and cost per pupil compared to other districts has come up in the past, and I have shown it in the past. I've not shown it in the past. People have asked about why I didn't show it, and then we break out the backup. So I'm not sure. I'd like some input on whether you think it's important for it to be included or to just continue to refer to it in backup.
I think we've got a lot of material in this presentation, so I would just keep it in backup.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree.
Yeah. I know. I feel like it's a little bit heavy in the front, but I feel like it needs to be explained, because there really are extenuating circumstances to why we're in the percentages are what they are, why the increases are what they are, because I really do feel like we did a good job with the budget, and unfortunately, we have a budget that's in that 2.5% range, and we've never really seen a result like a 15% increase in tax effort as because of that. And it's just kind of the good news that Brookline got additional aid and we were able to return more money to the taxpayer, but then that just because it lowers things on one end, it makes the increase just be more substantial, just the way that it works. So this is the comparative cost per pupil to the kind of other districts we've identified. And I have this is the same as that total tax rate trend chart. This is just a little bit longer trend, and it's ugly with the way it's presented right now with all those numbers kind of coming together. But this is just a longer time period to look at what the co-op tax rate trend is. And the bond schedule, we do sometimes get questions about where we stand with the bonds. And as we're going into FY22, we just have, a couple more years left of the middle school renovation, and then we're just left with the field. So we have that in backup. Another backup chart for the SAU budget is that it's kind of consistently 3.5%. I think I need to just double check that percentage. It might be a little bit higher, but I think it's still under 4% of the total co-op budget. This was just talking a little bit about NHRS, and I did think about, because NHRS is such a big impact on the budget, was tossing around to myself having another backup chart for NHRS for the rates themselves to show how they've changed, but I don't have that developed yet. And just the backup on the details. Oh, this is where I put that comment. For every shift in ADM, what does that result in? So that was just some backup. And then these are Drew's old rules of the meeting and things like that he had used last year. So I think that really covers it. I'm not sure if anyone thinks something else needs to be addressed, or again, I'm open to, should I move something? Should I present something in a different way, or open to input on that?
So my one comment is on slide 2. We list the school board members, but nowhere do we list the co-op budget committee members.
What? How did that happen?
Oh, no respect.
How could I have moved? What did I move us? What did I do with that? Did I delete us? My God, I have to take care of that right away.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. That's so funny. Okay, adding a chart right now. Okay, budget committee. That's crazy. Thank you.
Just copy and paste the same chart and change the names.
Yeah, all right. Great, thank you. Anything else?
I think we're in pretty good shape, but you've done a great job as always.
As always, yeah.
Yes, thank you very much on this. That's clearly a lot of work going into this.
Okay,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
great.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of
And I'll,
information
as
here.
I said, I'll clean it up, I'll share it, and I'll ask you to be very hypercritical and find those things like numbers aren't tying between the charts. You're saying it's going down here, but it's going up here. That's all great feedback, because I do get just too close to it and just start to not be able to kind of see things like that anymore. So I'll get everybody an update probably this weekend. Great.
Great.
And then the last thing on our agenda is a legislative update. And I want to take a minute and thank Brian, Tom Guillen, and Chris Hyde, who all participated in the online virtual public hearing for, I think it was House Bill 454. Was that it? I should know these numbers by now. 484. That was the bill that would limit budget committee recommendations on the warrant articles. They all spoke eloquently in opposition to the legislation. I believe there were actual other budget committee members from other communities that also were in opposition. The online vote was over like 16-4 in opposition. And from the feedback I received, and Brian, you can speak more specifically to what was said, but based on what I heard, felt that it had been very impactful statements by Brian, Tom, and Chris. Unfortunately, the committee, the Municipal and County Government Committee, did vote to move the bill forward. So it went by a 10-9 ought to pass, and the 9 who voted in the minority did submit a report. I don't know how to, I'll have to talk to maybe one of our legislators and see how to get the report of what's included in it, which is disappointing.
It'll be included in each week. They put out a House calendar, and as they come up for a vote, so the next April 7th, something like that is their next thing. So the Friday before that, they'll come up with the House calendar, which has all of the reports for all of the bills they're about to vote on.
Okay.
So it'll be big this time.
Okay. Well, that would be really good to get. And so it was disappointing because I felt I was hopeful that, and again, the feedback I received was that Brian, Tom, and Chris really did feel like they had made an impact. There was a member of the New Hampshire Municipal Association who was attending virtually, who originally had supported the bill, but upon understanding that, some of the arguments that were presented, changed his opinion, because I think there might have been a misunderstanding that the bill was merely clarifying the fact that budget committees can't do this anyway, which isn't the case. In fact, RSA 32 says what we shall do, which is make a recommendation on anything that appropriates, but it's silent on what on other aspects, which means we're not prevented from doing it. We had our own legal counsel who directed us. There's case law that supports us being able to do this, and it's would be a very unfortunate limitation on every single town, school and cooperative school district budget committee. And so, we operate under RSA 32. We provide recommendations to communities, but now in our specific case, one of the most impactful things that we would no longer be able to provide recommendations on a warrant article. It doesn't mean we can't do it here, doesn't mean we can't speak to it at a meeting, but on the warrant article itself is on apportionment. And in communities that have cooperative arrangements and apportionment formulas, many of them just had those formulas forever. They never come up. Nobody even talks about them. That's not the case in our district. And we have made, I think, impactful statements and representations to our community that we can continue to do, but it would be unfortunate if our recommendation couldn't be on a warrant article for something as impactful as a petition article to change the apportionment formula that deserves effective and considered financial analysis based on the information resident in the district, in the budget committee that we use to calculate and determine things on an annual basis. But from a town perspective, I believe Tom or Chris may have spoken to like the veterans tax credit. Again, not something that has a specific appropriation, but something that members of the town and legislative body look to the budget committee and say, budget committee, what do you think? Is that a good idea based on your knowledge of how the town operates and things like that? We had in Hollis had the land use sales tax a couple of years ago, where 50% of it used to go to the Conservation Commission, but now 100% goes to the Conservation Commission. It came up as a petition article. It didn't have an appropriation. Budget committee spoke to it. And again, it's still up to the legislative body, and it ended up passing. So now 100% of the land use tax goes to the Conservation Commission. They did not take the budget committee's recommendation, and that's fine. But it is there, and to kind of for a budget committee to look at what just give what an implication would be to a community, even if a dollar value isn't identified, and to limit every single budget committee to not be able to do that and have it stipulated on a warrant is just, it would be extremely disappointing to have that happen. And further, in communities that then have finance committees would be able to provide recommendations, and finance committee, no, it says
No,
specifically
it affects
budget
advisory
committees.
committees as well as official budget committees.
It does say both?
Yes, it specifically says both.
It
That
does,
was
okay.
targeted.
I'll take that argument back then. But it would just be unfortunate, and we just don't know what's going to come up.
Well,
And
Hey, Darlene?
yes.
sorry, Raul, I saw Brian first, and then Raul.
I
Brian.
just want to say, the example that I started off with and gave was really the removal of grades 7 and 8 from the co-op. Brookline can't absorb that kind of student input. We would have to build a new school building. We're talking about millions of dollars. It makes no sense for the budget committee to not be able to make a recommendation on an article that's going to cost one of our towns millions of dollars, but to say it's okay to make a recommendation on a $10,000 for a contingency fund.
That's a real, that's a great, I didn't really think about that, but you're right. That's a great analogy, Brian. Go ahead.
Yeah, Darlene, if that was the case, if we cannot state our recommendation during the meeting itself,
No.
can we use other avenues to advertise that ahead of time, perhaps, or maybe?
What we would not be able to have a recommendation on a non-appropriating article included on the warrant, on the printed warrant. It does not mean that we can't take a position and make a recommendation. It just can't be printed. So we can certainly go to the microphone and give the recommendation or not recommend.
Right.
It just can't be printed on the warrant.
So at least we can, it would have to change the way we advertise or we state our positions.
Yeah, we would have to, look to like that Rotary online newspaper and,
Yeah.
things like that to kind of get the position out and say, look, in our minutes on this date, this is where we took the position and things like that.
Yeah. But
Brian,
for
go ahead.
For school districts that have SB2, what you have printed in the warrant is all that most of the voters see. That's it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Good point.
So, I'm not sure what the best approach going forward is. I think I considered contacting individually, personally, our legislators for Hollis to say, please do not support this bill. So I could ask all of you to individually do that. We could take a position as a budget committee that says the budget committee is asking that you please not support this bill. So there are a couple of things we can do. I just don't know how to best make the argument or how to respond, if we should respond. So anyone's input on that would be appreciated.
yeah, I mean, ideally, what we should really do is get other budget committees around the state to contact their reps and exert some influence on them.
Unfortunately, like for the Hollis Budget Committee, we don't meet before April 7th, 8th or 9th. So depending on when budget committees meet, they might not be able to take a position as budget committees. But I appreciate that, like contact them just to let them know, and they can individually contact representatives and things like that. So if anybody knows anybody on a budget committee, that would be great. Or if we can, look them up and see and encourage them to do that. I would encourage you individually to contact your representatives with regard to this bill specifically. There are others that are equally impactful and meaningful. There was the education trust fund, setting up the educational, they call it EFA. What does the F stand for? The education funding accounts. It was to set up if you pull your child out of a public school district, that basically adequacy money gets put in a fund at the state level for you to use and be reimbursed for educational expenses. That one was, I believe, retained in committee. There's a school voucher bill. I'm not sure of the status of that one. There was a NHRS bill, a bill for the state to take to bear 5% of the cost. No, it was the one to bear 15% of the cost. I think that one was retained in committee, but the one with the 5% is still out there. So there's a lot happening right now. They're still addressing, there's still, I think, one bill left that could reinstitute the disparity aid. The one that, like I said, that did it most cleanly, that one was, I think, retained in committee. And I had a note, I thought, on the, I don't know if the SB2, I'll follow up with everybody on the other, there was an SB2 bill that would have allowed like absentee, if you're voting on SB2, you can have absentee ballots. I don't know, Brian, if you recall how that one ended up.
Yeah, I don't recall.
I looked it up and I don't think I wrote it down. That was House Bill 374. So I'll look that one up and let everybody know where that stands as well. So I just wanted to kind of give everybody that update.
That came out of committee with an ought to pass recommendation of 10-9. So that will be going to the House when they vote in early April.
Okay, so that'll go with the other one. Okay. Thank you for checking that, Brian. I appreciate it. Okay, I think that, oh, I would like, so does anyone, if I can develop some correspondence to some of the representatives, would you prefer to do that individually, or can we, I would entertain a motion to submit correspondence from the budget committee that we're not in favor of House Bill 484. But if we want to just do that individually, that's fine as well.
I will move that we officially oppose it and send letters to our representatives.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, that was by Brian, seconded by, who did I hear first? I heard Matt first. Okay, any discussion? I think it is important that we do take a position on it. So I will draft some correspondence and share it with you for feedback, and we'll get that.
No, we should actually take a vote on it.
Yes, yes. So I just want, that was just a little
Yes.
discussion about it. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll take the vote of all those for, if you would like to, the budget committee to form an official position to be shared with our representatives. Brian,
Yes.
Raul,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Dave. I'm looking at you, Dave, and I'm like, who am I looking? Dave,
Yes, absolutely.
Matt,
Yes.
Darlene votes yes. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, 0. Okay, great. Okay, I think that's all I had on the agenda. Oh, I just will ask, since we're assuming of a meeting on April 10th, do we feel like we need an April meeting, or should we take a break and wait until May?
Let's wait till May.
Okay, and that's true, because the 4th week is the April vacation week anyway. I don't know what everyone's plans are. Oh, I do want to mention, in case everyone hadn't heard, kudos to the district, the SAU this week. They held a 2-day vaccination clinic and delivered, I think, just over 1,000 vaccinations to the staffs of SAU 41, SAU 15 in Milford, 39 in Amherst. Anybody else, Kelly?
I think there were some Sohegan participants, but
Yep.
not a full.
Oh, okay. And then you'll do that again in 3 more weeks.
April 13th and 14th, I believe.
So it's going to be a busy couple of weeks. We go from an annual meeting to another
Yes.
2-day vaccination clinic. But
Do we have an idea who the audience is going to be for the injections for the next round?
it's the same.
Like-
Was it the Moderna?
It was Pfizer.
Oh, it was Pfizer. So it's the same people who went for the first round come back for the next round.
Okay, all right.
So that was held up at the high school.
Mhm.
And Kelly, how did it go? All the comments I saw were that it was a great day, and
Oh
the
yeah,
team in it.
it went incredibly smooth. We didn't expect it to go that smooth, and it was great. And Walgreens even told our HR director that we were one of the smoothest running group that they have done.
So how did that work, Kelly? Because I worked with like the Southern New Hampshire one organization, but there was no affiliation to Walgreens. So how did you guys get affiliated with them?
Well, we were plugged into the Nashua Regional Public Health System, but in the end, it was just taking so long for them to get back to us that out of the blue, we ended up with a phone call from DHHS. And so we actually worked with them directly, and they've done this in other school districts as well, and they're plugged into Walgreens. So it was
okay,
on the
great.
clinic, and they did an excellent job.
That's
Yeah.
great.
They pretty much, and DHHS pretty much told us what we needed to have in place and what we needed to do, and we did that, and because of that, we have just over 1,000 people, as you said, vaccinated. So
That's great. That's
Yes.
really, really great. And then
Yeah.
they'll come back through, and that'll be a nice, swath through this whole area of,
oh yes.
getting the teachers vaccinated.
Yeah, Milford and Amherst, Sauhegan, they were all very grateful for being able to participate as well, because I mean, even though the national regional public health system is doing theirs this weekend, at the time that we were contacted by DHHS, they didn't have a date yet, and we were told it could be up to 3 weeks later. So we were really happy to be able to do it the way we did it.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. I don't think I have any other announcements or anything at this time. Oh, we'll skip. Oh, I was looking at my calendar. So for May, that would be May 27th for a meeting. Okay, for our next meeting. Great. Okay, so I will look to Raul as our process observer for some feedback for this evening.
I'll be brief. I wrote down 3 terms: very efficient, informative, and as usual, jovial. So we had a great meeting. And I think with Darlene, you did a great job again, as always.
Above and beyond.
Happy to
You
do
may get reelected, Darlene.
it.
Yes.
Okay, well, if no one has anything else, I owe everybody an updated draft of the presentation and the correspondence to our representatives. And other than that, I will take a motion to adjourn at 8:05 p.m. from,
Sure.
So
Raul.
moved.
Second.
God, wait, who was first? Who was first? Dave. Your box lit up first, seconded by Lauren. Okay, I'll call the roll. Dave,
Yes.
Raul,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and Darlene votes yes. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned. See you
Thank
on
you very
May
much.
10th.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care.